Well, people really just want an echo chamber. Like, as much as they complain about the other side's echo chamber,
Yeah.
it's not fun to like be challenged and to have your values and your beliefs critically attacked.
Welcome, everybody. We're the COVID brothers.
Oh, man, yeah, we went down. We got COVID-19.
Yeah, so I went down first.
Super spreader.
Super spreader, dude. I don't know where I got it. I was feeling ill. Was fairly certain it wasn't COVID, but obviously it was just like, okay, it could be. And
well, you didn't feel that sick.
I was in and out in 3 days. No respiratory, anything.
You weren't worried about it until I went down.
Yeah.
And then I went down hard. And then Henry went down, your brother.
I got a test because you're a conservative type. You're just like careful about things, and you wanted to make sure. So I was like, all right, I'll tag along. It's very possible I gave it to you in the car on the way to get the test. But yeah, no, me, my brother, and you all got it.
Dude, so how was it for you?
It was a non-issue. It was 3 to 5 days. No, sorry, 3 days of a cold. Lighter than the flu that I had last year, but then weird lingering things like the taste stuff. I was eating sushi. I was like, this is trash. I thought my fruit went bad. I thought
bummer for me.
Yeah.
Salmon tastes bad now.
Still.
Which as a pescatarian
yeah,
is not ideal.
So I still it's improved. It hit a low point of like fruit's bad, fish is bad. Like the only things that are solid are like pretzel-y grains that just have nothing.
Dude, for me, everything tastes completely normal or better. Fruit tastes better. But salmon, which was the main part of my diet, completely unappetizing.
Still?
Yeah, still.
Interesting. So mine has rebounded. Mine has rebounded some, but yeah, no, I still can. Tastes are dull.
Yeah, I have to force myself to eat it.
That's
besides that, I had 105 fever.
Yeah,
which wasn't ideal. Sick. I got really sick for like 3 days. I was like sweating and didn't sleep. My sleep thing for my Oura Ring is hilarious. I was waking up like 25 times a night, sleeping in 20-minute increments. Then had like a normal cold for 3 days, and within 10 days, completely fine.
Yeah.
So it was weird because I went down, but still like bounced back. Never had respiratory problems, never lost sense of smell, and didn't have a cough until every other symptom went away. And then when I was completely healthy, I developed like a weird hacking cough.
After 3 days of solidness, like probably days 7, 8, 9-ish, started noticing that I was at 90%. My breaths weren't filling me up as much as they could. I was still able, like we have a spot, I didn't go anywhere near people, but like in my parking spot in the garage, I was able to jump rope. And it was like more tiring than,
really?
Yeah, but still was able to do the same jump rope thing that I do.
Weirdly, my stamina is better because I lost 7 pounds. So I just lost all this unnecessary muscle.
Yeah.
And so running and surfing is like way easier. The one thing I don't know if you noticed, so I still had to walk my dog, even though I was wearing N95 masks, legit like hospital masks, because I didn't want to get other people sick, but I couldn't stay quarantined because I had to walk my dog. When I was outside, I was so fight or flight hostile. Like people would walk past me and I would just imagine fighting them. I'd imagine if they like picked on my dog, and dude, it was weird. It was really weird. And I never have that. Something about being sick. I think I felt like more vulnerable maybe. But it was very noticeable for days.
That's not a symptom I've seen on the sheet.
No, but it was just interesting. I think like when I got in my brain, I was like, I'm vulnerable.
Yeah. I
had definitely increased aggression and assessed everyone as if we were going to fight for like 3 days when I was walking my dog. It was very, very bizarre. I don't know if you noticed any psychological impacts.
Not at all. Maybe that's what it feels like to be a woman in life, you know, just knowing that you're vulnerable.
It made me think, because I'm like, I did an MMA fight for fun. You know, I mean, I've done all the fight stuff, but I'm very non-aggressive. And it was just yet another example of like, dude, that's just your brain chemistry. You can't possibly congratulate yourself for this. The fact I've never started a bar fight or anything like that. And it's like, you didn't earn that. There's just a guy that when he gets 6 beers, his brain just tells him to punch things.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, I had that. I was at a point where if someone had bumped me, I would have at least had an adrenaline spike.
I had,
and then got healthy and it went away. My fight or flight returned to normal.
I think it's useful to have moments in your life where your internal brain chemistry goes awry, so that you can
talk about
empathize.
When you went on those pills.
Yeah. So I was taking Propecia, which is a hair loss thing. And I was like, let's get out in front of this thing. Let's do
Let's do prevent defense. I got it.
And I still was like, I was noticing like some losing, some thinning. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get on Propecia. And at the time, I'd had a breakup 2 months earlier, was like recovering, but sad about it.
But fine, sleeping
but
fine,
solid.
Moving on.
And I've ruined the story now. But one night out of the middle of nowhere, I spend 6 hours tossing and turning, recognizing that I've ruined my one opportunity with my true love. I cannot sleep at all.
Yeah.
I am just wrecked. I mean, I seriously get to 5:30 a.m. before I get a lick of shut-eye, and I was in bed by like 9:30 p.m. So it's more than 6 hours. I was tossing and turning. I was planning on, I like had the text written in my phone. I wrote everything. I was like, you can't send this yet, but like 2 more days of this and like it's over. We're getting back together. I'll do anything.
Yeah. You're basically like, this sucks so much that I will just go back to the bad relationship.
Yes.
And then somehow you realized it was because of the Propecia.
Well, then I woke up in the morning and I was running late. I was tired. I was like, oh, I forgot to take my pill. And I was like, wait a second. So I didn't take the pill.
Well, you were like, oh, my hair is going to fall out.
Yeah, my hair is going to fall out.
I better take my Propecia.
And I didn't take the pill. And no joke, 6 hours later was fine.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Was like, oh yeah, like that was a bummer of a breakup. And I'm sad. Yeah, like, but
not going to get back together.
No
with
way.
Not going to call her at 5 a.m.
Yeah, it gave me empathy for PMS. It gave me empathy for a lot of those brain chemistry things.
Sure.
Because I think prior to that, I've had such positive, stable brain chemistry that I was like, if you're not looking on the bright side of things or just taking some deep breaths, you're not doing what is necessary.
Oh, yeah, we've talked about this. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like Tony Robbins, who's someone that I learned a lot from, really credit him with a lot of my personal growth and success. So like thumbs up for that. But he tells a story about Robin Williams and how he killed himself and how it's an example of what you focus on determines your happiness, because he says Robin Williams had it all. Everyone loved him, super famous, money, but he focused on the wrong things. And so because of that, he was depressed and suicidal. And then they autopsied Robin Williams' brain, and it was basically eating itself because he had a disease that made it so that he felt the way he did, which was depressed and suicidal.
He couldn't remember his lines. He had dementia. He was all over the place emotionally.
Because Robin Williams hadn't occurred to him to have a gratitude journal. It's because his brain destroyed itself because of a disease. And so when I found that out, I was like, oh, power of positive thinking is great. It'll help you wherever you are, but it doesn't guarantee you a 10 out of 10 psyche. You know what I mean? It'll just improve you from where you are. But if your brain chemistry is a 3 out of 10, it's only going to take you to a 5 out of 10. And if you're at a 9 out of 10, it's foolish to like look down on people who are at a 4 out of 10 mental health wise as like not trying hard enough with personal development.
Sure. Well, we've talked about, I mean, the ultimate privilege is being happy. That's the old, like, forget if you've got no water, like, if you're happy being tortured, what have you really got to like? So if your brain chemistry and your history and whatever you've encountered in this world has enabled you to be happy throughout a wide variety of circumstances, you have the ultimate privilege.
Yeah. Which isn't to say you can't change your brain chemistry through tons of meditation or psychedelic use or something. It's not like a hopeless thing. But yeah, definitely I think in terms of like, oh, check your privilege. Like, yeah, if you have good mental health because your brain chemistry is on point, that's your biggest privilege.
And I use them all the time. But Avicii is the handsome, white, young, famous,
rich,
talented artist that had changed the world and probably saved lives with his music and wound up killing himself after years of drug addiction. It's like, we really need to rethink what privilege means when you can have everything and feel miserable. And hopefully we're getting closer to that as we get more insight into, we talked about Kim Kardashian in the past, we don't need to go into it, but more insight into the lives of the people that seemingly have everything that
for sure. This was just another example for me where my own brain chemistry shifted. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so at the whims of whatever happens between my ears from a chemical perspective. Yeah. And COVID changed something. And I went from like cool, calm, collected, long fuse to
I'll kill you.
The guy that was just like, all right, there's 5 teenagers walking towards me. I'm going to elbow that one. And I'm going to be 4-on-1. Here's how I'm going to do it.
I'm going to breathe in his face and threaten him.
Yeah. It's just like, all because my brain chemistry changed.
So we, moving along. This is a topic that I don't know how specific to be, but I've had several examples in the last handful of weeks since we've been on of just recognizing the screwy incentive structure of the world, specifically when it comes to giving advice that the incentives are towards sensationalism, PR skill, looking good on a stage or on a YouTube video or whatever, and not towards telling the truth.
Yeah.
And so I saw this, and I think I can say this much. I spoke at Traffic and Conversion Summit. I think I did a good job. I've actually seen speakers there that I know have done a good job because they've helped me. I tuned into some speeches at this thing because it was a digital event.
From other people.
From other people that were worse than not learning about marketing. I swear to God,
I believe you.
that because they would set you in the wrong direction.
Sure.
And if you opened up that person's books, I guarantee whatever method like that this particular individual was teaching, I'm not going to call anyone's particular out, is not where they make their money. They make their money convincing other people that this particular method works, and then workshopping, coaching, and
well, I'll give an example because my friend does drop shipping, and so he saw some drop shipper who was claiming to make $1 million a month or something, $100,000 a month, whatever it was, and so he was watching his video to try to figure out how to grow his own thing, and the guy shows his earnings, and my friend paused the video and he looks at it and goes, "This guy makes no money on drop shipping, and all his money teaching people how to drop ship. So I can learn nothing from him because I'm already making more from drop shipping. The only thing I'm not doing is selling how to get rich to other people." And so, it's just this huge thing where people who haven't done it will lie, manipulate data, make things look a certain way just to convince you to pay them, because it's really just a pyramid scheme. Coaches, coaching coaches, how to coach coaches, how to make money.
Totally. And I know some of these people, and they're not especially unethical by any stretch, because in knowing them, they believe that what they do works.
Well, it's weird. It's almost cult-like in the sense that you get indoctrinated into the pyramid.
Yeah.
And then the guy above you is telling you that this is ethical, that this is great, that anyone who, it's kind of like white fragility. Like anyone who says that this is bad has limiting beliefs and is evil and is trying to hold you back and make you unsuccessful. And so they create a system where like
booby trap defense mechanisms.
You have to believe the guru, and anyone that says that the guru is bad or that what you're doing is bad because you're teaching people how to teach people how to teach people, you immediately ignore them because you've been indoctrinated into this cult.
The word that is that in success porn is haters. Ignore the haters becomes the thing that they can just be discounted, entirely.
Yeah.
But go ahead. That's
No, that's it. That's just my only point is like they know that people will be critical of the fact that it's a pyramid scheme. And so instead of going, I'm going to start a business that's not a pyramid scheme, I'm going to start a business that sells bone broth or whatever it might be, they just go, well, I'm going to indoctrinate my clients so that they have mental cognitive dissonance anytime someone tells them it's a pyramid scheme.
But even them, I think even them, you're kind of treating them as if there's a mastermind at the top. I think what you have all the way up is self-deception. I don't think you actually have like a pinnacle guy who's like, hee, like all of these fools. No, it's self-deception all the way up. And as you get to the top, even their clients are successful. So they're like, this shit works. Like 100% of the people I talk to on a daily basis are making money.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the incentive structure throughout the pyramid is to ignore the vast majority of people that don't get value, that, and say, no, the system works. What's broken is the people.
Well, that's I don't know if you want to hop around, but I have another thing about incentives. But the key thing is, to your point, it's not about evil people. It's about incentives. And with the right incentives, crazy shit happens. Like when I was making this police video, I found a guy, I don't want to get it wrong. Let me look into it. So there's a guy named Michael Morton who was convicted for murdering his wife. And 25 years later, he was released because of DNA evidence. It turns out the prosecutor hid the evidence because by winning the case, he won Prosecutor of the Year and it launched him into a successful career. He got promoted, all this stuff. It reminded me of the Duke lacrosse rape case when the prosecutor hid evidence because he just really wanted these kids to get arrested.
Yeah.
If you had an incentive system where and you shouldn't do this because it would break the judicial system. But if you had a system where if you put a innocent person in jail, you immediately get disbarred. You would never see anyone withhold evidence. Yeah. But when you set up a system where if you withhold evidence and win a case, it launches your career, it makes you rich and famous, what you get is prosecutors withholding evidence from the defense. So it's just like, these predictable incentive structures create behavior that nobody wants. And that's why I think like the most important thing for people to think about is what does this incentivize?
So there's 100 ways to think about this. But what's interesting, and you gave two cases, one guy who went to jail and the Duke lacrosse kids who obviously didn't. the way the system is supposed to work is you have a horribly biased prosecutor and a horribly biased defense attorney.
Yep.
And that with all of the appeals and whatever available to them, that will shake out to get you to the truth.
Yep.
The problem is when you have a well-equipped prosecutor in this case and a garbage defense attorney because the person being indicted is poor. Right.
Yep.
The Duke Lacrosse kids walked and got a big settlement because they were not poor.
Well, there's 6 of them.
Yes.
They got 6 people to pool their money
Yep.
to get the best attorney they could.
Yes.
I don't know if this guy was just a random guy, just like a middle class dude whose wife had gotten murdered.
With an excellent attorney, I believe that
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I guess OJ. No, well, we don't know who did anything, but yes.
If he did it.
If OJ did it, his lawyer was great. No, I think that's fair. Yeah, you're at the mercy of who's representing you and who's representing the other side.
Sure.
But the point is, this wasn't just a great prosecutor. This was a prosecutor who purposefully and illegally withheld evidence.
Mm-hmm.
That's an incentives thing as well.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Because if the defense had been playing against someone who wasn't cheating, they probably would have gotten the guy off of his conviction.
Yeah. And so this came to me, and I should call myself out first because we're not free from these same incentives. So when we make YouTube videos, for instance, like my incentive is to come up with a structure of things that one could be benefited if they did in order to be more charismatic, which is probably causes me to focus too much on specific things. Like if my only goal were to make sure that the people who watch the videos became as charismatic as possible, it would look more like Charisma University, which is fewer videos focused on a particular action. Charisma University has essentially 30 days, 20 minutes, and that's it. Like it's less stuff than the YouTube channel,
which is hundreds of
which
videos.
Is like more.
Yeah,
like
the goal is to make each video good, but also just by having 300 unorganized videos, it's immediately less effective than a 30-day program that's linear.
Yes, and I am incentivized, for instance, to make videos about the most popular people, whether or not those are the most charismatic. So we finally got around to Craig Ferguson, and it finally did well. Yeah. But Craig is so much more charismatic and has so much more to be said about him than many of the people that I've covered before him. So we are subject to this as well, and we try to resist the worst incentivization that we have, but still play into it. But this occurred to me again in watching YouTube. People who there's someone that I watched who did a breakdown of the income of YouTubers, and I looked and it was like 98% upvoted. And I happen to know, being a YouTuber, that the estimates were off by at least an order of magnitude, 10 times wrong. And I have reason.
Like someone making $9 million, they said that was making like $90 million.
Yes. Well, yeah, we don't. That's 10 times is the point. And I believe that this person, with gun to their head, would get way closer to the truth because they have enough data available to them. But which video is more interesting? How this person makes this much money or how this person makes 10 times that much money?
They say the person's name, right? So it's like if someone were to do a video on us, and they're like, oh, how Charisma on Command makes $1 million.
Yeah.
How Charisma on Command makes $50 million.
Yeah.
What's going to get more clicks?
Of course.
$50 million.
Yes.
It's not true.
It's not true at all. Yes. And it's like people who watch this will be led down the exact wrong path. They will think that sponsors pay this much money, which is 10 times more than sponsors pay, which will make their plans wrong by a factor of 10.
Sure.
And when I look back at the beginning of our business, I'll list out a couple. Like the amount of people telling us to guest post was truly stunning. Let me just go on the record and say, if you're not guest posting on Oprah Winfrey, Joe Rogan, or the Tim Ferriss show, or the comparable thing in your niche, it is the worst thing that you can do. Why don't you build someone else's audience? Yeah. Like it's almost evil advice. And so many people were telling us, you got to guest post, man. You got to guest post. That's not how they got big. They had one massive person who broke them through, right? And then they say guest posting is what did it. It's like, no, that's not what you did by any stretch. And I love Tony, and we've mentioned, but Tony Robbins' book on wealth has nothing about starting a business. It's got it like Tony got rich from investing $100 a month since he was the age of 20.
Just for if people don't know, Tony Robbins is like worth $500 million. And he did it by starting his own businesses and then angel investing in other businesses. If you buy his book on wealth, he talks about investing in low cost ETF mutual funds. And that's just not how he made $500 million. Maybe it's how he went from $420 million to $500 million. But like you'd think that if you had to chart how Tony Robbins created wealth, it would be about creating a business that's successful, and then seed funding other businesses because he now owns 10 businesses.
I think he owns more than 10. But and to his credit, he has a business mastery course which he sells, which I've seen and is good. And it's not that investing in mutual funds is a bad idea. It's just not how you master the game of money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like talking about compound interest without talking about income is ludicrous.
Yeah. No, and to your point, he has other stuff. His Personal Power 2 audio programs.
Amazing.
Great. If you own a business, that program will help you grow your business. But it just wasn't in his book.
Yes. So I see this all the time. And Tony's example isn't even one of incentives because he didn't necessarily need money. Perhaps his interest was in like, I'm trying to make a book for Joe Schmo who can't start a business because I know that 99% of businesses will fail. So maybe his even matched it. But there's at least two things happening here. People who have achieved success teaching courses that do not reflect how they did it, which is difficult. And this is the coaches coaching coaches. It's like
the guy who claims he's making money drop shipping, but he's really making money selling you how to do drop shipping.
Yeah. And then the other thing is what we talked about, which is the incentive structure of the creator. Take us, for instance, not matching what is best for the person on the other end. So like, look, I hope you enjoy all of our charisma videos, but the fact is, if we had 30 perfect ones instead of 300 good ones, like the people who watch them would be better off, but there'd be fewer people
by a lot,
by a lot,
1,000, like 1,000x less.
By a lot. Because I would have picked no-name people, and like I didn't, and see you, which is it's like here's someone you've never heard of.
About. So what do we get like 9 million views or something a year?
A month.
Oh, a month. Okay, so 9 million views a month.
You should look at the analytics, dude.
9 million views a month. If we just had put Charisma University up on YouTube, that was it. Just once a day, we released a video for 30 days, and then we stopped. How many views do you think that would get a month? Because I think it would be nothing. like 10,000 maybe net. Well, not if we'd started with.
If we'd started with
those were the
zero.
first 30 videos.
Zero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if we just took Charisma University, put it up on YouTube, 30 days, and then we're like, we're done. It's the perfect program. 0 people would see it.
Sure.
So like, it's only by going via Craig Ferguson and Kevin Hart and all these people that anybody even sees the good stuff.
Yeah.
Because like YouTube wouldn't promote me and you sitting in front of a camera chatting.
Well, and I don't want to confuse two things. I think that there's incentives aligned ethical marketing where you sell the beach body and deliver the diet. You know what I mean? Where you talk about like, look, here's your outcome and you can achieve it. And it's like, okay, here's the broccoli and the rigorous workout routine.
Oh, I think that's fine. Yeah,
exactly.
I think it's totally fine to sell the benefits and not necessarily the mechanism for getting there. It's like, listen, I'm not going to tell you what's in this, but 6-pack abs are around the corner.
Yeah.
And then it's like a hard workout and a good diet for 3 months. Well, that's fine. That's going to get you your 6-pack abs.
So included in that, I would say, like, it's not unethical to do a breakdown of an individual. You know what I mean? It's not. I don't think that there's any problem with that. The problem comes when you allow the pursuit of things that are good for you, views, money, etc., to completely color the data in a way that is predictably going to negatively influence the people watching it. So I think for us, like, one of the predictable things that could happen is people could get information overload. You know, and I try to make that clear in the videos. I'm like, don't watch all of these at once. And then I get these messages like, I've just binged all of your videos. I'm like, I hope you enjoyed it because you're going to get very little from it when it's done that way. So I've just been seeing a lot of it. I want to do less of it in our business because it's gross and we're all guilty of it. And we can reduce if there's a carbon footprint, there's also a bullshit footprint of disseminating crap. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, and the audience, I feel like I know a lot about starting a successful YouTube channel. I have not made money teaching people how to do it. And while I would like to recoup some value, I also feel like I have so much that in the right hands would be so useful. But I am not incentivized to create a how to start a YouTube channel video because I don't have a course on it and it would just take a lot of time.
And you don't want to make a course because you're hesitant to get into the how to do business
world.
And
I don't want to make a course because I understand that there's danger to the how to earn money is a very slippery slope to all manner of sin. So my question is there a way for me to be incentivized personally to put in the work to teach it in a way that would help the world? Or is it just like, wow, what a bummer. Like I know all of this stuff and I can't get it to the right people because it's just not worth my time or something like that.
I've told you this. I don't think you are excited by it, but I think there's an opportunity to take applications and do a Y Combinator for YouTube, where you just basically take 10 people, you cap it for real, not fake scarcity, like really like 10 people, because it's going to take some of your time. And then you, through the applicants, find people you think have the talent to be successful on YouTube. And you go, okay, you guys are going to give me 10%. And then I'm going to help you grow 100x. And so you're going to make 100x more money, and then you're going to give 10% of it to me. And I think that would be ethical, cleanly aligned incentives, helps give value to 10 people in a way that I really think would 100x their potential to succeed.
If they were the right people.
If they were the right people. So that's the solution that I like. But
so I think of the Team 10 debacle, which is Jake Paul pulls all these kids in, takes 20%, calls it Team 10, but takes 20%.
Were there 10 of them?
I think there was like 10 of them,
Yeah,
but then there was more. And but he took 20%, and quite frankly, is 100% responsible for the success, because every single one of them got successful, and as they lost association with Jake Paul, their star has waned.
Sure.
So in any event, it's like, look, you had to technically be there, but like he's the X factor in all of this.
Sure.
You're replaceable. He is not.
But you'd be behind the scenes. So if somebody in this Y Combinator model, you wouldn't be the voice or the guru or anything. So like if Justin made a YouTube channel that was about something he cared about, the fans would think that it was Justin. You would just be the mentor. So you can't take away his fame. Whereas Jake Paul could just be like, hey, you're kicked out of the house.
You're out of the house.
It's like, okay, well, that's the end of your career.
Yeah. So I'm actually more exposed in this one because I can put in a lot of help and work to a small channel, and then they don't want to give the 10% or whatever. But anyway, the point that I saw is contracts like this and Y Combinator are difficult without like equity shares, because there's such a disconnect chronologically of value put in and value turned back around.
You do an equity share. That's what Y Combinator does. Y Combinator, for people who don't know, basically they take people that have good ideas. They say, I'm going to permanently own some percentage of your business forever. In 30 years, when you're making money, you'll be paying me. But the flip side is most businesses fail. And when you go through Y Combinator, you get a bunch of really smart mentors who have launched hundreds of businesses. The chances that you succeed to the point where you're making 7 figures are much higher.
Yeah.
And so that's the deal. They go, you're going to give me some percentage forever. I'm going to be incredibly helpful in your first couple of years, and hopefully you'll achieve success levels above anything you could have done on your own.
Well, so then I'll flip this one. I know the other option is to view like recompense not in terms of dollars, which is to say, if I took 10 people and really helped them with their YouTube channel and owned nothing, I was just like, dude, I believe in you. I'm getting tired of making this shit and you're fresh. Like, could there just be not even karmic. Now I'm friends with 10 people that have good YouTube channels, and I've done them a huge solid. Like if I filter for good people that are likely to reciprocate in some way without a contract, is that likely to be a good thing and a good use of time?
Depends on how motivating it is for you. You know, I think
it's almost more motivating, because I actually like what I fear about the 10% is that I might not earn it. You know what I mean? That for somebody, they might find a different path of breaking through and I could sign the contract. And so many people have tried to screw us with the same contract. So I hate it. You remember we went to this one agency and the deal was, look, we're going to do this platform and this, and we're going to help you with this. And you're just going to send 10%. And by the way, the money's going to hit us first and we'll send you 90. And there was just all of these crooks with this same exact
side, all our
idea.
foreign language channels have benefited greatly from this deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we do 50-50 splits with people who translate our content into other languages. So you come in, take all our videos, you translate them into Italian, you translate Charisma University into Italian, and then we go 50-50, which is more than 10%. And everybody's winning because it's like much easier for them than starting their own YouTube channel. We're not going to translate into Italian on our own. So like certainly not all equity splits are destructive. Some are very valuable.
Yeah. So I'll zoom out, and I don't want to spend more time on this because I'm sure it's not interesting to everybody. But the interesting question is there a way to structure things such that my incentives are aligned? Because I do believe that the course model, particularly for earn money, is dangerous. And the course model is dangerous as is. You know what I mean? Like you can be just as much of a fraud in the charisma space. And I don't want to pretend that There's not a world where a charisma company could be shit. I happen to think that we do a really good job. I think that what keeps us safe is our like basically complete and total refund policy, which is like
the reason well, yeah, that's why I feel 1,000% positive that we aren't a scam, because you can buy the course and for 60 days for no reason at all, you can just get a refund. So the only money we keep are people who want us to keep their money. So I think when you have a note, like some people do action-based guarantees where they're like, you can get your money back as long as you jump through these 7 hoops, do a somersault, don't eat for 5 days. Like, but yeah, if we just say there's literally a button, you just push it and you get your money back. It's like, how could you be a scam if the only money you keep is voluntary?
And by the way, since we're on the topic, if you do want to join Charisma University and check the money back guarantee, all that stuff out, go ahead, click the link in the description. It's there. It's got a 60-day money back guarantee that you can use for any reason at all. And the point of the entire course is to become more charismatic and confident in 30 days. It's specifically very actionable. We've had thousands of people go through it and really enjoy it. So if that's of interest to you, check it out in the description. Yeah. One
thing, and then we'll move on. But if you want to, you could just do the Y Combinator thing. Get people to come in who were like happy to give you 10%. And then if one just flourishes on his own, just like void the contract and give him his mony back.
Yeah. So what I would say is if you guys are patrons or if you're in the comments and you have thoughts about this, let me know. This is something I'm noodling on. And the big question is, the statement is courses I think are a broken model where, especially in the make money niche, 99% of people lose money. And if you look at the totality of what happens, value is destroyed. It's a upwards funneling of $2,000 to $3,000 to the person who's running it. Money is wasted on ads, on this fake belief that you can just make it happen. And there's no accountability to actually make those people deliver. And the worst case scenarios is where these people are coaching coaches, and many of them are successful in now spreading the same broken business model of, now I'm going to coach you to teach other people to grow their business.
So your question is, what is a model that will create value, help you to get your YouTube knowledge to other people in a way that's exciting to you and valuable to them, that's not a business course? Because you don't want to enter the business course world.
Broken, where everybody looks back and like, wow, that was net to the world positive. Good things happen of these collaborations.
Let's see what we get in the comments.
Yeah, so let us know.
I have another incentive thing. It's a little bit tangential, but
can I actually related to this? Well, go ahead. You got incentives. I was just going to say, so we have a patron who was very generous and did the full Alpha and Omega package and donated to make this episode happen. So what is his name? His name is John, right? And he runs a YouTube channel called Media Magnates. So I went to check it out, and I have to say, like, I would not say this if it was not the case. The most recent video that he did is fucking excellent, except for the parts that matter the most. And what I mean by that is it's a video on the things that we've talked about here, on how it's very difficult to know what is true in this world and all the layers at which that is occurring. Fake news, deceptive things, your own brain tricking you. It's like 20 minutes. The editing is completely like as good, if not better than ours. The problem is that the weakest parts are the title, the thumbnail, and like the first minute and a half,
right?
Which is, so a little lesson for people, not just on YouTube, but on life. I was thinking about this. There's roughly 2 categories of things in the world. There are things, events, whatever, where the beginning and the end are both guaranteed to happen and are roughly equally weighted. So a basketball game, like if you are rusty at the beginning of basketball games, but come alive in the second half, there's not really a problem to that.
Yeah, Paul George literally just did this. Played like shit in the first half, fire in the second half, his team won.
You could do it every game, and it's really not a problem. It's like a point in the first quarter and a point in the third quarter are worth the same, and the third quarter is always going to happen.
Okay, what's the other category?
The other category of things is where if you don't pass certain checkpoints, you don't make it to the next level.
Yeah.
Conversations are like
Flirting
this.
is like this.
So we would get guys who'd be like, dude, once I've talked to her for an hour, if I can just get to that point, man, she's going to love me.
Yeah. I hook up with like half the women that I manage to talk to for an hour. It's like, it's because everyone that doesn't like you is just opting out. So you're like,
so you never get to the hour.
Of course you do.
Yes. So conversations are like this.
Everybody does.
Flirting is like this. Job interviews, gated things, and YouTube is like this.
Yeah.
And the first gate where 97 or 98% of the people just get not included is at the title and the thumbnail.
Yep.
So his thumbnail, and I mean this in the most constructive way because I think he's got very good content, is low contrast, doesn't all these things. I'm going to make a separate video for you if you're listening right now that goes deeper into all of this.
Well, I think the bigger thing is people don't spend the time on it. They don't think about it like this. So they make a video that's their magnum opus that they love, and they'll spend, let's say, a full week, 40 hours doing it. And then on their thumbnail, they will spend 30 minutes. And on brainstorming their title, they'll spend 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at a 40-hour week, less than 1 hour went to title and thumbnail. Your video success is
97%.
much more than 2% of it is due to the title and the thumbnail.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get this weird thing where people don't understand what matters if your goal is to get views and to grow on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that they're not capable of making good thumbnails. It's that that's not where their time goes. It's not where their mental energy goes. When they're in the shower thinking about the video, they're thinking about what B-roll should be in minute 30 instead of what they should be brainstorming, which is like, how do I make this title more exciting to click?
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is people just don't focus on the stuff that matters.
Sure. So, and even if you're not a YouTuber, these things exist in your life. If you think that you're you're a strong closer in a sales process or in flirting or in whatever, get your ego out of the way and recognize that you don't get to close every single opportunity.
Yeah.
So like you got to build the front end is much more important. So
if people who don't dress well and then don't understand, well, I can't go to a bar and just talk to women. It's such a struggle. You're just hamstringing yourself in the first second.
Yes. So
getting to the personality part.
Spend time and energy and effort on these front things. And we don't need to go into the YouTube, but we spend a lot of time and energy on our titles and thumbnails and the formatting and the topic. So I'm going to put a link to that video. I really do think it's good. It talks about a lot of the stuff that we discuss. And I think the first point, it just unfortunately is weak and seems obvious to me, but I'll make a separate video for you on that.
What's the channel called?
I think it's called Media Magnates. One other thought, and this is general, but I'll include it. I saw that John has a YouTube course on how to grow a YouTube channel and has not yet, in my opinion, done it. Like is at 8-ish thousand subs. Really good. Like your content is you eventually can have this course. You're going to get there if you learn and do it. But I think it's dangerous, not just for the people who buy it, but for you to at all enter into the mindset that you're ready to teach when you're at this stage.
Yeah, we've seen this with people. If you become a teacher in something, oftentimes you lose your learner's mindset.
Yes.
And also for your imposter syndrome's sake, you feel like all of a sudden you shouldn't be buying YouTube courses because you're a YouTube guru or whatever it might be. Like you stop studying because you think that that's where you're at.
Yes, I have seen this disrupt people. Massively. It gets in the way of them asking questions. They become competitive with other people teaching. It can actually, it's not just bad for the customers who are now getting the playbook that has gotten you to where you are, but not further than where you are.
Oh yeah, it'll stop your growth.
It's going to stop your growth. So my recommendation for anybody, and not just because I actually do think that there's a lot of amazing stuff to this channel. It wasn't just this video. I clicked around. I was like, there's so much solid stuff happening here. I would recommend that you stop selling that course for now. Set a metric, whether it's you're making this amount of money or have this many subscribers or whatever. And then of course you can teach it. Now I think what's always available, and I want to keep room for this, is you do not have to, for instance, have the biggest YouTube channel in order to teach YouTube.
No.
You just need to make sure that what you're selling reflects what you have done and can achieve. And I think the course is about building a YouTube empire. And in my opinion, this is not yet a YouTube empire. So similarly, like you don't have to.
You could have a 1 million subscriber YouTube channel and your course could be called How I Built a 1 Million Subscriber YouTube Channel. It's like, great, you did.
Yeah.
You're not PewDiePie, but you don't have to be.
And it can be, how to make a full-time living off of YouTube, and if you did that before the course, like perfect. That's amazing. If you're 185 pounds in solid, or screw it. If you're 170 pounds and you're not really that ripped, but you lost 50 pounds, you could still make a fitness course on how to lose weight. Maybe not how to compete in muscle contest things, beach body, but so in any event, all of this to say, I actually see a ton of good stuff in here. And if we do this thing, I would love John to be part of whatever it is we do. And I'm not even trying to take 10% of your thing. Like I think it's very likely that we do this karmic just amorphously owe me one, but you got great stuff and we appreciate you supporting the podcast. So cool. That's that. You said incentives.
Oh yeah, this was just a shower thought I had, but I was thinking about because I was thinking about the Vaush conversation we had, and I was thinking about Black Lives Matter, and I was thinking about how the streets were filled with people because of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. And I was like, I wonder if any black people have been shot recently by police. So I gave it a Google. And it turns out there have been. Because there's 200, I think.
250 a year.
Get shot a year. So like that's going to be every other day.
Every other day or one every
And also, just to be clear, like multiple white people have been shot by police since those marches and protests.
In probably just the same, like,
no more,
what
no
you would
less.
expect.
Just an even distribution over the years. Black people have been shot since those protests. White people have been shot since those protests. I would bet that most people don't know their names. And it just made me think and realize that we are at the whim of the propaganda machine. Mm-hmm. And we kind of touched on this in our last podcast, but I think people think that the news that they consume is safe. So they think the other side's is biased, but theirs isn't. Or they think the mainstream media is biased, but not my Ben Shapiro or not my Young Turks. And I was just thinking about this, and it's like the media, to some degree, I truly think is an outrage machine or a sadness machine, and it's meant to manipulate you. And so like when it was convenient to have this outrage, I think because there was an election coming up, a lot of outrage came up. And then when Biden started to perform worse in cities that had riots, I think there was a dip in media coverage. Mm-hmm. And now that the election results are in, I haven't heard a peep about it. And that's interesting to me because it's not just what you see on the news, but it's what you see in the streets, which is to say suddenly all these people who are really concerned with police brutality aren't marching. You know, some are marching, some march every day in front of like Congress, but the amount of people marching is 1%.
Well, you know what's funny?
So like where
you wouldn't know if there was marches going on because if they don't cover the marches,
sure.
Like, and you can suffocate it that way as well. There can be a massive populist uprising that you're just like, not on my neighborhood or not in my street.
Yes. Which for me, but it isn't actually about Black Lives Matter at all. I was just thinking about it. I was like, wow, we are really at the whim of the outrage machine mm-hmm. and the propaganda machine. And I think that if we think we know how big a problem is, like the amount of people being shot is the same today as it was 4 months ago, and it will be the same as it was a year ago or whatever until there's massive systemic change. But the amount that it weighs on people's minds is not in their control at all. And it's just really fascinating to me. It made me realize that I think we should all be a lot less certain with our views of like what we think is happening in the world.
Yeah. Well, of course, we're going to learn that over and over again. I saw an interesting thing. And again, I don't even know if this is true because it was a random thing on Reddit. There was Data is Beautiful. It was causes of death in America. Google searches for the 2016 of, related causes of death. New York Times coverage of topics and Guardian coverage of topics. And as predicted, heart disease, 30%. Invisible in the New York Times and invisible.
Yeah, no one is talking about how like what you're eating is killing you.
Cancer, 20%. We're at half of the Americans who die. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
I think it was 30 and 30.
Whatever. Cancer, interestingly, larger but still underrepresented.
Yeah.
Terrorism, like no one. Like terrorism,
yeah.
Big thing. And it's obviously sensationalized, but this comes back to incentives. If you can ask yourself what incentives are driving this, the obvious answer is not the protection of Americans. It's
not saving lives.
It's not
if you
saving
save lives. You would just try to change people's diets. You'd make a radical push
against
to make
refined sugars. Yeah,
have a massive tax and disincentive, make it too expensive to consume at the rate that we consume, and you would save so many more lives.
Well, if you, it's funny because if you look at it, you got heart disease, cancer, then like next is like diabetes. I mean, it's like diet, all the way down. And
you get to I think you get to over 60% of deaths are diet.
Yes.
If you believe, which I do, that your diet contributes to heart disease and cancer.
Sure.
I guess if someone's going to say that heart disease and cancer are purely genetic, then me and them are just going to have a different discussion on the importance of nutrition.
But again, and everything you know about that comes from a book that you read and not looking through a microscope. So allow for yourself to be.
It's from just believing a small subsection of doctors and scientists. But like, if for whatever reason they were incentivized to lie about that,
well, guess
then
what?
I would be misinformed.
Guess what, man? Publish or perish. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, who's got a crazy thing to say? Because like power poses increase your testosterone all of a sudden. So yeah, and this is what John's video actually talks about. It's like the layers of bullshit that you have to wade through to eventually get to it. And to recognize that even your own psyche is not interested in the truth. It's interested in advantage. So like the way that I perceive everything in this room is like, I'm not even like, oh, like there's a coat laying on that thing. But first off, I separated it and I labeled it a coat because its use to me is in keeping me warm, not as like a piece of fabric or why am I separating the coat from the counter that it's on because they're touching and technically that would make it one thing. It's like, no, my use of a counter is to cut it on. And I'm just, everything I look at as utility to me.
Sure.
as do we all. So like there's just like layer after layer after layer of not truth to go through. And it gets in the way, I mean, not only of you accessing the truth, but of starting a successful business or like planning your life so that you don't die, because now like you've avoided every terrorist attack, but have been chowing down on Twinkies.
Every
like,
day you drink 7 supersized Cokes.
yeah.
But you avoid major buildings because you want to make sure you avoid the next 9/11 target.
Exactly.
Like, you're just going to get a heart attack sitting at home.
Yeah. So we've got a world full of people with, 7 or 8 layers of deception fog glasses on, all screaming at each other about how they're certain that the other people have got it wrong.
Yeah.
It's just like,
it's
a hilarious state of affairs.
No, it actually, I mean, it constantly blows my mind, impresses me. I don't know the word. I'm always shocked at how convinced people are that the other side is a certain thing.
Yeah.
And the description they give is perfect for their side as well.
Yeah.
Like, these people are idiots who consume news from a certain channel and they're just sucking down propaganda and misinformation. Like, but that's probably true, but like also true of you while you're shouting this.
You know what? I read something. It was an Amazon book review. Okay, so this is fascinating. So Douglas Murray, highly controversial guy who talks about how IQ and race are related and potentially like different amongst racial groups, which has scary implications if people don't want to look into it.
Doesn't necessarily say it's genetic. He literally just says that if you do studies, you'll see a difference in cohorts.
Well, I don't even know. I haven't even read his book, but I know because Amazon, he's got a new book that comes out next year that is specifically like talking about this. So anyway, I've not read his books. I know that he's a very controversial figure in the podcast world. That's all that I know. But I read a review of his. One was glowing, and the 1-star had a bunch of citations, and it was a takedown of this, Kaplan 1997, this. And it occurred to me, it's like, wow, what college teaches us about citations, well, I understand the intent. It's deeply unscientific because the way that everyone, I think probably even your thesis advisors read your thesis, is they do not reference every single citation you make and then go to that book and then reference the citations they make and find the ground kernel of truth and research from which it all stems.
Yeah.
It's an appeal to authority over and over and over.
You're saying they just see the superscript number that is a citation. They go, oh, the sentence.
Oh, that's
is
a
true.
book that other people have referenced. And how do we know that it's true? He's got a lot of citations. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people say that I'm right too. Like, it's just a popularity contest masked as truth. And and if the foundational research is broken and everybody cites it, why does that make it any more true? And I don't have a better solution because I understand why this model would be made, because it's like, look, if a lot of people are checking it, we're kind of crowdsourcing and trusting, but that's not how truth works. And we know this because you weren't allowed to look through the telescope to see that, like, look, the moon has craters in it. It's not perfectly round and it moves in this way. And like, if you go with consensus, Apollo is pulling the chariot of the sun across the sky in a stationary world, and you just wind up nowhere with consensus. Somebody has to investigate the most deeply held truths that everybody agrees upon, and no one is doing it. But we have this believe the science mentality on both sides, by the way. On every side, they'll just reference some study that they don't understand. It's just a hilarious state of affairs where you're just screaming, telling people to recognize your authority figures cloaked as scientific inquiry.
People do this all the time. It's so fascinating. They'll be like, a study shows, and the study is of 26 college kids.
Yeah, we've talked about this.
This isn't nearly enough people from nearly diverse enough population to tell us anything. But once it becomes a study, game on. Then everyone can just cite it.
I'd like to talk to someone from the hard sciences because I suspect that this stuff still happens in the hard sciences, but hopefully there's a closer recourse to what you want is a feedback mechanism that slaps you in the face when you get it wrong. So if you're launching a rocket based on math, based on theories that don't work, your rocket's just going to fucking explode. Yes.
Like, you have to get that right.
But if you get your politics wrong, people just suffer. You know what I mean? We've been doing that. We've been doing that for a long time.
Math is wrong. It costs him billions of dollars. But if your poli-sci math is wrong, you just get to profit from publishing a study, and people will just take the wrong conclusion and then live their lives.
Yeah. So the question is, are these feedback loops tight? Do they slap the person proposing it and not someone else? Like all of these things are because what I can't do is function in the world distrusting everything that other people say and consensus. So I try to add a handful of these questions like, how does their incentive structure work? What is their feedback loop like? Do they have skin in the game? And it hopefully helps. And yeah, I'm learning to do it better. But when I look at the beginning of our business, it cost us at least 2 years of just garbage teachers telling us to do guest posts, build someone else's audience. So yeah, don't have to do that one too much longer. I have a handful of other things.
Go for it. I have so much, but none of them's really
we haven't
time
chatted.
sensitive.
So this coronavirus relief thing, it's going to be old news in 2 minutes,
Might not even pass.
But just into recognition to how some of the sausage is made, there was included in it that streaming, the broadcasting of my brother constantly is just watching NBA games that I don't think we pay for. He's like, I can't get my streams.
Yeah.
And so he looked it up, and there was a provision written into the coronavirus relief package that is streaming is now a felony. Like for streaming providing streaming for commercial profit is now a felony.
Providing streams, not illegally streaming in the way that you would like watch something
receiving
as a consumer. Yeah.
But what's I think is it's like sure maybe I don't know, but can we put that in the streaming is a bad bad
that was
act?
my sense. I was like, people were kind of outraged about it. I'm like, I'm not even sure I'm opposed to this bill if it were just itself. Like it's illegal to provide illegal streams. I think I'm actually okay with that. But it seems weird that you couldn't, if you're a congressperson, you couldn't sign the stimulus bill without passing that part of it. Like to take that part out would require discussing it and
just ludicrous
removing it and voting on it. And so like you couldn't get people or companies their stimulus in a timely fashion unless you just accept that that's going to become a felony.
So what I take in is that somebody who that matters to, which is Disney or Netflix, I don't know particularly who.
Yeah, for sure.
Gets to write these things.
Yep.
And that person does not have the interests of, and perhaps their company is included, and maybe it's a good thing, but it's certainly not something that the majority of people care about in their coronavirus stimulus.
Well, if AOC is to be believed, I think they got this thing like 2 hours before they had to sign it or not sign it. And if you don't sign it, it doesn't get ratified.
You don't get money.
It goes back to the drawing board. Basically, you have to like re-ratify a new bill.
So
and she's just like, I would have to read 40 pages. I forget, it was like 40 pages in a minute or something.
Yeah, it's crazy.
She's just like, this isn't, I'm being asked to vote blind on a thing that has so many like sub bills that I don't understand.
So in any event, I'm disenchanted with politics. That's kind of where I land on that is, please leave me alone as much as possible because I don't like this thing. I don't like how it works.
You're saying you're skewing towards a government that bothers you less because
I'm not even skewing towards a government that bothers me less. I'm like, I want to not be like.
Do you mean talking about it or you mean being
Who am I going to vote for? Who am I going to vote for? Some guy that says that he won't do this? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like he says that he's not going to be a piece of vying, manipulative. Like it's just so removed. And what I just, I don't know how to do it, but I was just, okay, sausage is made in a really gross way again. That's all.
Sure.
That's all.
No, I saw the same thing. And honestly, I don't even know if I think it's a bad law to pass. I just don't understand why we didn't look at it individually. It seems weird to package it all together.
Yeah. So one last thing for me, and then we can do yours. So I, as you know, have been watching a lot of D&D for the last couple of weeks. I don't know why. I think
it's the Joe
Manganiello.
Doing a breakdown.
I was gonna do a nerd breakdown.
A video. So there's Henry Cavill. For people who don't know, Henry Cavill and Joe Manganiello are very big into nerdy things like Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer 40,000. And so you were going to do a video on how to be charismatic and cool because people really like those guys while having super nerdy hobbies.
Yeah.
And it took you down a rabbit hole.
Took me down to D&D.
Super nerdy hobbies.
Yeah. So I could tell stories about campaigns, but I won't. I won't bore you.
You understand now why at age 13 I used to sneak away to play a role-playing game.
What I notice is that the difference between nerds and everyone else is simply, I guess it's kind of two things. It's imagination and lack of shame around that imagination. So take comic books. They were nerdy.
Yep.
Like the 90s, that they were not cool.
Yeah.
but it's because you have to like imagine these things. But as soon as they put it on a big screen and like let it play out, they're modern day gods. You know, like everybody loves Iron Man, but at the time you had to imagine this guy. You see these people like painting their little action figures like pew pew, and I step around and I slice you know, and I would say the majority of people look at that and go, what dorks. But if they could see that scene playing out in front of them, would be so freaking into it because the stories are fun and you're engaged and you're playing it. And Baldur's Gate.
Dude, I'll do you one better. If I tell you that I personally have created a cleric character and I gave him 16 dexterity because it helps my armor class, everyone is just like, nerd.
Yeah.
But if I tell you that I know that Joel Embiid averaged 24 points and 12 rebounds last season, and I think he's going to do 26 and 13 this season, but his plus minus is worse than Rudy Gobert's because his defense is underrated. Nobody thinks I'm a nerd. Maybe they think I like basketball too much or I'm too in the weeds, but no one is like, oh, let's bully that. Let's tease that. That's something to be ashamed of. Knowing the same like stats, but for something you can't even participate in. Something you can only watch and shout at as you have no influence on the outcome.
Yeah.
But in this game where you are a full participant, having that same knowledge is just poo-pooed because it's not cool for whatever reason.
And so the funny thing about fantasy football is it still has this, you still get to watch football, right? It's still, there's no imagination really, or less imagination necessary than with these games. But you could imagine if you were into like real fantasy football, like my team punts and like kicks, people would think that you're a nerd because what is required in all of these things is imagination and a lack of shame about the vivid world that you're capable of creating in your head and co-creating with your friends. And so just for me, it made me think a couple of things. That if you were a nerd back in the day, I really think you should lean into that because technology is making it so that you need less and less imagination in order to do these things. And so Dungeons and Dragons was this fringe thing. When Baldur's Gate 3 releases, it's going to be one of the biggest video games.
Oh, it's going to be amazing because so Baldur's Gate 3 is based around Dungeons and Dragons 5e. I didn't even know what what that was until I bought the video game, but it's just the rule set. So like every couple of years, Dungeons and Dragons, I guess, updates their rule set. In let's say a year when this game releases and is, I think, going to be one of the biggest selling computer games of the year, 100 times more people will know the rules to Dungeons and Dragons 5e on accident because they'll just be playing this game and they'll have to learn the game system.
So I don't know if this is a stock tip or if this is a business tip, but think of the imagination stuff that you loved as a kid. So like we would play paintball, but imagine that we had set the forest on fire and like there was no time and we had to like run at each other. Like we would come up with all of these things and see if you can create that same experience for someone who doesn't have imagination. And I promise you will have a banger of a business on your. So like if you can somehow, I mean, even prior to paintball, it was like, I'm shooting you, and that's nerdy. But okay, now I've got a paintball gun that hits.
Game of Thrones was a book. It did pretty well. And then they just made it a TV show and it smashed.
Yes. So find ways, or not even find ways. Take the things that you imagined as a kid that were amazing and like make a movie or a video game or a VR thing or some kind of thing, because everything that was nerdy is about to become the coolest shit ever. And you saw it with Game of Thrones. You're going to see it with D&D as these video games come out. And video games in general used to be these hyper nerdy things. And why? Because you had to imagine more because the graphics were worse. It was like, what was this little door, like this little dot hopping around? It's like, that is a knight. And he's in the land of, it's like, this is fucking stupid. He hits him for 14 damage. All of a sudden, you've got a health bar and a guy and he bleeds a sudden. And 14 damage makes everybody loves God of War. Never mind the fact that you've got hit points just like you did back in the days of I don't know, Dragon Quest.
I think it's a great point. It is funny actually. A lot of the nerdy stuff is becoming incredibly popular. The Witcher on Netflix was an obscure Polish book. It became a video game and then became one of the most popular Netflix TV shows.
So whatever it is, and I want to play this game with us because what it means is like just go back to when you were a kid and that feeling that you felt.
Dude, I got it, and I'll give it away because no one will do it. But it was Vampire the Masquerade.
What's happening?
It's just a nerdier Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, they are. It's in production for a video game.
So, and I don't know. I think there's going to be technology beyond that incorporates VR or whatever. But we don't need to beat this one to death. I think there's a lot there, and I think that people will underestimate the success of like moving from tabletop role playing to video game role playing. It's going to be 100 or 1,000 factor.
So I think the one thing that Henry and Joe have in common, and that I have seen myself in my own life, is what you look like.
Yeah.
Has a massive impact on how people interpret your nerdy hobbies. So when I was a kid, I hit puberty incredibly late. So I was like really small. I had acne. My teeth were fucked up. And when I liked comic books and role-playing games and all that stuff, it was not well received as like a cool thing, but had a little bit of a glow up. And I tell girls if I'm meeting them and it comes up that I like this nerdy stuff now, and like no one cares. And so I don't know the answer yet, but I do feel like there's a bit of thin slice bias because someone sees you before they learn your hobbies.
Yep.
And so like they see you and they're like, okay, I've got you assessed. You're like a well-dressed guy in an expensive bar where I know the drinks are expensive. It turns out that you like Dungeons and Dragons. I don't care because I've already decided based on your clothes and where we're located that you're cool.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
People love it when you break the type that they place you into. They become very interested in that.
Yes. So there's a guy from Big Bang Theory who loves Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And I think that's a less interesting thing to people
Yep.
than the fact that Henry Cavill does.
Yep.
Because Henry Cavill looks like a marble statue.
Yep. 100%.
So the question is like, well, what do you do? Because we're giving all this advice. Like, what do you do if you're the Big Bang Theory guy? I think you still lean into it.
You lift weights.
No, I mean, maybe you
no,
do.
I'm going to make the video and it's there's an element of like, look, muscle is one way to get a different typecast, but I do see that, and I experienced this abroad. I had two options when I was abroad. When I walked up to somebody for the first time, I could start speaking in English or Spanish/Portuguese, depending on where we were. If I started in Spanish and Portuguese, I had solid Spanish and Portuguese, and we would continue, and it would be a fine interaction.
Yeah, but not impressed. No one's like, oh my God, wow.
It's like, oh, how long you've been here for? Yeah, cool. If I started in English, and I just went for like 10 minutes in English, and then somebody walked up, like, then they would try in English, and they'd be like, what's that word? And then I would just bust out the Portuguese. Mind blown.
Yeah,
all of a sudden,
I would see it. They'd be like, "Oh my God!"
All of a sudden, my Spanish and Portuguese were next level.
Yeah.
How and it was literally just allowing them to put me into a box and then breaking out of it. And so I've done that with a lot of. I've tried to set up situations like that at various times in my life with regards to how I present myself. So if you wear a particular set of clothes or you look really big and buff, I actually think if you've stereotyped yourself to be the big tough guy, if you got a shaved head, you got the big beard, you got tattoos, and you like go in a conversation like that for 5-10 minutes with a couple of dudes, and then you bust out Dungeons and Dragons, those dudes will fucking love you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like you're like, and you know everything about the movies and like all that trivia. It's gonna go over so well. Versus even if you dress like that, but immediately break out of the box, like you want to let people put you into the box and then.
You know
what's
interesting? Sometimes I do find that if you're in that circle though, like you're not always welcome because of the way you look, if that makes sense. So like if I go to an improv class and most people are kind of they're more out of shape and they don't dress particularly well and they are the type of person you would assume likes Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I like Dungeons and Dragons too. They're not super hyped about it necessarily. They're kind of just like, no, we don't want you in this.
You're gonna have to prove your cred.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that occurs for sure. But anyway, I'll make the video. I'm not gonna do it all here. So
I look forward to watching it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great concept.
So my last thing for the day is that YouTube, this happened weeks ago, but is still interesting, stopped the promulgation or basically said they will shut down any video that says that Donald Trump lost the election because of widespread fraud. Which is interesting, obviously, because for years they allowed videos that said that he won the election because of widespread fraud, which includes everything about Russia, for years and years and years. And so I think it's almost, I'd be interested if anyone disagreed with me. YouTube has made their political stance very clear, and they've also made very clear that they're going to allow it to influence what videos exist on their platform. If anybody disagrees, we can talk about why I think that, but I would be surprised at this point if anybody doesn't feel that way.
Okay. At a high level, you're just saying it was okay to make a video saying Trump won because of fraud, but it's not okay to make a video
it's
saying
too dangerous.
Trump lost.
It's too dangerous to say
so
that.
That's where your thesis is coming
Yes. So in any event, what was interesting is that we've often look at incentives. Like that is not a good decision from a business perspective.
Yeah, especially because it seems like most YouTube users are right-leaning.
Yes. And so they piss off the user base, but also they expose themselves to an existential threat, which is being titled not a platform but a publisher under US law.
Which will be the death of them.
Which is, I mean, they're going to have to get a new category or something or lose millions and hundreds of millions of dollars just to stay alive. And to make that decision really threw me for a loop because I was like, whoa, this is an example of putting ideology before profits. And I don't ever see that. But then I was like, wait a second. I realize the loop that Americans have. Chinese probably have a very different culture. It's the number one God is short-term profits. The second God is ideology. And the third God is long-term profits.
Got it.
So like if this exploded YouTube that week, no chance. If YouTube immediately lost their status as a platform, they'd walk this back in a fucking heartbeat. They'd be done. It'd be over. All you people saying that, like, sit down. But man, we are such a short-term culture that our ideology squeezes in between short and long-term profits. It's incredible.
Well, also, I think people sometimes don't understand the causes of success in their business. So like you did a video or a blog post about the X-Men franchise.
Yeah.
Because if you chart the Rotten Tomatoes score of the X-Men franchise and then the profit of the X-Men franchise.
Well, at first, it's like completely uncorrelated.
Right. And then you take the profits and you shift it back one movie.
Yes.
So that you're lining up how the last movie did with how the current movie profited.
Yeah.
It lines up almost perfect.
Yeah.
Which is to say the quality of your last movie determines how much money you make in this movie. Makes total sense. When you lay it out like this, it's like, yeah, no, duh. But then what the movie execs did is they would look at the current movie and the current movie profits to make decisions. And so they'd be like, oh, this movie didn't make a lot of money. It didn't have Wolverine. We need Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, the movie you made before this sucked. So no one saw this one. But this one's actually great. It doesn't need anything. You just need to make another movie. And then the next movie did really well.
Yeah.
But people were so short-term focused that a lot of times we don't understand like what's happening to us right now is actually the culmination of years of past actions. And so I think our culture is so short-term focused, we can't even necessarily diagnose the long-term causes for things. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, and with X-Men, it broke my heart because to me, First Class is one of the best movies, one of the lower performers. They took it in but
it was just novel relative to the other superhero movies.
Yeah, they took it in a different, they brought Wolverine back and made Days of Future Past all about Wolverine because the Wolverine movies relatively performed well. But again, my thesis in this is that they were riding off the success of the movie before that. Like, so in any event, YouTube, man, crazy, horrible long-term decision-making for the value of their company. Now it's kind of that long tail risks that might not happen. Like it's possible that it has no impact on their status, but what a chink in their armor when they go to defend themselves as a platform and not a publisher. The other thing that's just a bummer is that, okay, Parler exists now and all the Republicans are moving to Parler. They're the free speech platform, but it's like, let's not kid ourselves. This is not the free speech platform. This is the Republican platform,
Oh yeah. You go on there and you
start saying some stuff that leans left or blue, and you're done on Parler. So now it's like, gosh, man, we can't. This is why we can't have nice things.
People really just want an echo chamber. Like as much as they complain about the other side's echo chamber, it's not fun to like be challenged and to have your values and your beliefs critically attacked. And often people, I saw this in the comments with our Vaush video, very few people on either side were changed. They just thought that whoever was saying what they already believed was the smart person.
Yeah.
And that the person who was disagreeing with them was dumb. And so, I think it seems pretty obvious to me that self-selecting into an echo chamber YouTube is like exactly what people want. Just to never be confronted with something that says that they're wrong.
Yeah. And I think the deeper point of this is that we're all desperate to identify with something outside of our own internal experience. And the news provides us with a squawk box of like, you can identify with your beliefs about politics or the severity of the coronavirus. I was talking to my sister. So 4 people in my family have now had coronavirus and gotten over it. My sister is the odd one out.
Just to be clear, also, your parents live across the country. You're not actually a super spreader. This was a coincidence.
No. I got you and my roommate.
I don't want people to think you were being reckless. No. You got me and your roommate. Your parents got
it. Just happened to
5,000 miles away.
I didn't see them on Thanksgiving. They got it. Yep. So we all have it now. We're like, look, let's go. I live in California. We're locked down to the teeth.
Yep.
I was like, I'd like to go sit at a restaurant. I'll wear my mask on the way in. I haven't done that in a long time.
It's been over 2 weeks too, so CDC says you're not contagious.
I'm set. I appreciate you looking out for me.
Yep.
And but I was like, let's go to Las Vegas and we'll gamble on the casino floor and like we'll enjoy our antibodies.
Yep.
And my sister, who is a young, healthy person, throughout all these conversations has been watching a lot of news and is very, very frightened of the coronavirus and didn't want to come, not because she was worried about getting the coronavirus, but because the way that I talk about it is flippant, sometimes. Oftentimes, I'm often flippant about it. And I'm quasi joking. I quasi feel like that. It's a longer conversation, maybe for another podcast. But she's like, no, I don't want to come and I don't want to hear you say that it's not that big a deal. And I was like, Jackie, like, we disagree about so many things. Like, this is not core to who you are. Like, can we not have diametrically opposed opinions here and have it really not matter? Like, that I can't get you sick. Like all of these things we agree upon. You're not actually going to be in any sort of risk. Just the fact that I disagree with you is a thing. And once I said it, she very much was like, yeah, I'll come. But it was just interesting to me to see, again, like just people hate to be disagreed with about those things with which they identify. And the news is just constantly giving us more in many cases, useless beliefs with which to identify and convincing you that you're a bad citizen if you don't identify with these sorts of things, because an informed citizen watches the news, which I hope we've thoroughly dismantled in terms of a way to understand the world at this point.
People also, I think, like they weaponize the worst of what's on the other side, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? So like, I didn't know this. I just looked this up randomly because I was curious how many Proud Boys there are, because you hear so much about it. It's at most, the highest number I could find was 6,000. The election seems to split about 50-50. If you assume kids mostly that are under 18 probably agree with their parents, you're looking at like 150 million Democrats and 150 million Republicans, right?
Yeah.
But so many Democrats will just say that everyone who's a Republican is a racist Proud Boy. And so many people on the right will just say that the left is full of authoritarian socialists who want to censor us and they want to limit our freedoms to the most degree possible, right? It's like, this just isn't true. Like you're weaponizing the worst part of the other side, or what you think is the worst part of the other side. But actually, like, most of the people on the other side are just exactly like you.
Yep.
And like you agree on 98% of things. So it's interesting to see that the far away tails get like so much coverage. I see this on Twitter too. People will be like, oh yeah, like people are outraged. And then you look at their source and it's three tweets. You're like, there's 300 million people in the US. You found 3 random people with no credentials who are upset by this. And your headline is, people are furious.
It all ties into what we've talked about. What is the incentive structure of the person writing that headline? Get clicks. Yeah. If you write 3 people are outraged, you just destroy the value of that article to advertisers.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, but I mean, this hasn't come through. My bias is just hopefully to people who listen to us, I'm just trying to get the hate out of you a little bit to like not caricature the other side or demonize the other side. Because I think that's like the biggest weakness in our society. There's a great quote from some president, I think it was, who just says, if someone disagrees with you on 20% of policy, they're not your enemy. They're 80% your ally. And like, now you just have to have a dialogue about the other 20%. But if you think that anybody who disagrees with you on 20% of things is your enemy to be hated and vilified, you can't possibly come across the aisle to like inform each other or have a compromise.
Well, you know what I think is perhaps an even bigger problem, and it occurred to me as we spoke to Vaush. We spent an hour on the definition of the word racism, and we danced around it, never really got to it. We didn't change his mind, he didn't change ours, and I don't think any of the audience mind was changed. Hopefully they enjoyed the exchange. I would propose that if we speak again, we recognize that it's like a useless line, not because we're not going to agree, but because heart disease is the problem. Remember, 30% of people are dying of heart disease, 20% are dying of cancer. Like this. The fact that we like disagree here is so inconsequential, because if you tell me, hey, I want to get more clean water, better, so it's like, I'm on board. Like, I'd prefer you didn't call people who disagree with you racist, but like, we're going to want so many of similar things if we can just, now we will diverge, because what you will say at some point is, I want quotas on hiring, and I want this many people, and it matters, the gender and the color of your senator is important. And eventually we will disagree.
Sure.
But we could get a lot done before we get to some of those points. And I was just like, yeah, if we speak again, I'd like it if the word racism just never came up. Like what a silly waste of time. Given
interesting. I had the exact opposite. I want to rehash it.
Well,
I feel like we started too far down the finish line. I feel like if I could do it again, I'd start by saying, let's define Republican.
What do we get?
Let's define racist.
So what is the victory if we get that? So now he says that fewer people are racists?
Well, we've talked about this. If you misdiagnose a problem, I think you're going to come up with different solutions. So if actually we had 150 million racist people in the country, you'd want a solution for that, right? But if you think that that's not the case, then you don't focus on it. You can focus on solving something else. So like, if you think that police are killing a certain race in a disproportionate amount relative to the amount of crime they commit, you'll want to do racial training for police. If you think that crime falls roughly in line with who's committing crime, you'll do different training. Instead of doing racial bias training, you'll do some sort of training that gets people just in general to not pull the trigger. So I actually think if you misdefine the problem, you're going to have a different solution.
Let's play this game. Police killed 1,200 people a year. Okay, let's go back to the chart.
Sure.
Like, okay, and you want to do heart disease. Okay, like let's say it's predominantly black. Like, I'm down for most solutions that like if it 80% helps the black community and only 20%, I don't care.
Me too. What I'm saying is if you are wrong and you focus on racial bias training when it's not caused by racism, you won't solve whatever problem you're trying to solve.
Yes, but perhaps we could even just reorient towards a larger problem.
Yeah,
and we could agree that, like,
especially because I actually would bet that heart disease and obesity probably negatively infects the poor more than the wealthy,
which
so
is
if you're
correlated
looking
with
for a pie chart that affects black people at a higher percentage than their 13% of the population. You could probably still be like, listen, this is the one. Yeah, it's heart disease.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying is that there's
selling sugar is racist.
Yeah, that's a fun route to go down. Do you have anything else before we go to questions?
I have a lot. Let me see if there's any. I mean, most of it can probably wait because, like I said, it's not time sensitive.
We've been backed up for a while.
There's one cool one that I'll just bring up because we've done so much that is about politics or whatever. There was the first no-kill lab-grown meat.
I saw that, man,
in Singapore. So
I saw that.
Charlie and I have a hypothesis, which is that in 300 years, factory farming is going to be looked at in the same way we look at slavery, which is that once economically you don't have to do factory farming, and I'm not saying eating meat, I'm saying factory farming, slaughterhouses, all of a sudden people will acknowledge that treating animals that way is immoral.
A moral abomination, yeah.
So how do you get there? Well, you kind of need technological advancements because it seems like just shouting about this doesn't do anything. Singapore can grow meat in a lab and they're selling it. So they've gone through trials. They've decided it's healthy for human consumption. So that's a huge deal.
So what's interesting is that there's two kinds of scientists. I forget. There's the Teslas, I believe, that like first time 0 to 1 breakthroughs. Mm-hmm. And then there's the Edisons who are like, they make a commercial and the Edisons make all the money. But we've already done this. We've already made lab grown meat. It could happen. But it was like $300,000 a patty.
Yep.
This is in the line of the Edison, which is like, it's break even for an expensive burger, but like you could get this burger. I could get this burger. Like it's
still too expensive to be an actual solution. Mm-hmm. But what it means is that an actual solution is in sight. Once you can get the cost.
How expensive was the patty? It's like $30 an ounce or something.
Yeah, it puts you at like a premium steakhouse.
I would do it in a heartbeat. I miss.
I would do it too, but you're looking at such a small part of the population. I mean, even we couldn't afford to eat it every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, I could, to be fair, I can eat a premium steakhouse every day.
Not if it's, what would you say, $50 an ounce?
Well, sorry. I said it was 30 an ounce, and then you said, yeah, it's a premium steakhouse.
No, sorry, 30 an ounce. So like if you're eating, let's say you'd want to eat 16 ounces of it a day.
That's a lot of money.
What does that break down to? That's like $500 a day.
30 times, that's quite 30 times 16. That's
a lot for food.
Yeah, it's a lot.
You could do it for a special occasion.
Yeah.
But what you're looking for is for it to become McDonald's eventually. Like because the slaughterhouses can already be avoided with grass-fed, pasture-raised. Now you get into a gray area where honestly, like I'm not gonna call that today's slavery. I think it's up in the air to discuss. The easy one for me is like they're crying in pain as they're slammed together and they're dehydrated and they're just miserable. That's the cheapest meat. So if you want to replace slaughterhouses, you need to get all the way down to the lowest cost.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you'll get a split where the top 1% of people...
You're just saving the grass-fed beef.
Yeah, exactly.
Is now...
Okay, let's say that this is affordable every day for the top 1%. So you're just replacing people who are already probably getting grass-fed, free-range beef.
Yeah.
But we might be a decade away from the McDonald's dollar hamburger being lab-grown, at which point there's no reason to defend the slaughterhouse. And once you don't have to defend the slaughterhouse, you can get rid of the slaughterhouse. You know what I mean?
And then you can judge everyone who used to.
Yeah, and then you just look back to your great grandpa
and have a great Instagram purge of all the the meat photos that people posted.
No, it's great. I mean, it's awesome. The fact that it's for sale, and it also means that to some extent they think that it's safe for consumption. So it's cool.
That's gonna be great. I'm excited for that. I'm gonna bulk up, baby. I'm getting it back. I'm getting it back.
So excited for it.
Anything else you wanted to do?
No. Well, do we have YouTube questions or just Patreon questions?
We have a handful of YouTube questions.
Cool. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it.
Oh, by the way, I'll do a little Patreon CTA.
There you go.
You guys make it happen. I got it. Like we've broke things down. We've had sponsors and we appreciate them a ton. Justin is very much funded by our patrons. So if you guys enjoy this and you want us to do more of it, please consider becoming a patron. Still today, we are answering every question. It's getting to be a lot. So I don't know how long that's going to be the case, but it's still the case. So if you're a patron and you write a question in there, we will get to it and we will answer it in a Q&A that is exclusive to patrons. And these are becoming longer and longer.
That's what I was going to say. So we'll probably shoot an hour of questions that are only available. It's Patreon questions that are only available to patrons. So yeah, that's probably an extra hour at this point.
And I think there's good value in there because you're able to ask specific questions. Whereas, we talk about like politics and these broad, hopefully touches everybody on the podcast.
We'll skip certain questions if they're specific to something that we don't think is universally applicable to the whole audience. But if it's something you're interested in, this is a chance.
So we basically have another podcast on our Patreon if you want to check it out. And I think in many ways, it's just as good as the stuff that we normally talk about. So if you want to check that out, please, again, consider joining Patreon. And thank you to our patrons.
Awesome. First one is, over the past few years, I've built my network and made a lot of friends and other loose connections with people. Recently, I've had to connect a lot of people and make introductions, but they've turned painfully awkward very quickly because they don't have anything to talk about. How can you introduce people in a way that stimulates conversation and could lead to a friendship between the two people you introduced?
Do you want to take this one?
Well, the first thing I think of is, are you introducing them because you think they could be friends, or because someone has requested an introduction, or just because they're your friends? Because certainly I have friends that I wouldn't necessarily try to force to be friends. I have different friend groups. So I would be curious what the catalyst is for the introduction.
Yeah.
If it's like, I think you guys would get along and something's just going awry here that you're not clicking. Or if it's like, oh, I'm going to introduce my surfer friend to my Dungeons and Dragons friend, and then I can't figure out why they get along.
So I don't know that this answers the question directly, but I would when we were in bars and clubs, there was always the idea that you wanted to MC your friend on the way in, because it looks good to you and it lets him, immediately integrate into a group. So you walk to me, I'm like, this is my friend Ben, he's the man. And depending on the audience, I'll read the room, I'll be like, he's about to have a cage fight in a month. He's been training his ass off, but don't worry, he's not going to hurt you guys. We're safe. Well,
this is a little bit different. So you're saying we're in bars and clubs, and we had a rule that was whoever initiates a conversation, people who come in can't try to steal the girl that guy's interested in, or the friend that guy's interested in. Mostly it was girls, because we saw a lot of guy friend groups would just fight over female attention, and they just everybody looks like shit. So what you're saying is, I would walk in, you would hype me up because you'd been talking to the group, you'd established yourself as a cool person, and then I would respect the fact that I wasn't trying to whatever your goal was with this group, my job was not to shit on it but to help you. So that's why that worked.
So I'm just saying, when it comes to introducing people, at least the literal introduction of it, you need to talk to him about, hype them both up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Give them a conversational thread that is going to be interesting to both of them.
Well, also, build the bridge. If I do, let's say I do have a Dungeons and Dragons friend and I have a surfer friend, and the surfer friend looks like a meathead or maybe a stoner, but they both love the Game of Thrones TV show, give them that.
Bridge. I know he looks like a male model, but deep down he's a complete nerd at heart. He's got his D20 in his pocket right now, or whatever. And you're giving them that initial thing so that whatever the thin slice stereotype, I can't be friends with this person, is hopefully cut through. Does that answer the question mostly, or am I missing an element?
I felt like this had more to do with business connections.
Okay, can you go back and just cover that part?
So they said, over the past few years, I've built my network and made a lot of friends and other loose connections with people. Recently, I've had to connect a lot of people and make introductions, but they've turned painfully awkward very quick.
Well, I would say,
yeah, no, it's the same. It's the same principle though.
Yeah. Don't do a win-lose introduction, first of all. So like if someone hit me up and was like, hey, my friend has a YouTube channel and I would love for you to help him, but this is like a loose acquaintance. Like if a close friend hit me up, I'm like, yeah, I don't care how big this person's channel is. But someone I met once at a networking event, it's like, hey, I really think this would be great for you to talk to this guy about YouTube. And the guy has 6 subscribers. It's like, this isn't great for me. You're trying to use my time to make this other person like you or benefit or whatever, but you're lying and masking it as if it's good for both of us.
Yeah.
In that case, they're better off just being like, hey, can you do me a favor? That's the first thing. Is I think I've had people mask this as like, this is a win-win. I'm like, no, it's not. It's a win-lose. So just say that. But then the second thing is if you do focus on only making win-win introductions.
Well, just for that, and you can just ask people like, hey, there's this guy I know. Do you want me to introduce you? He blah, 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 blah. Is it a great first step to all of this? Because there's been times where I've been like, no, not really.
Oh, everyone I know that makes good money hates non-checked introductions.
Yes.
They hate it. Everybody I know is like, thank you for checking with me.
Yeah.
Yes. Or thank you for checking with me.
So
no.
check.
But the biggest way to piss people off is to introduce them to somebody without clearing it with them first.
Yeah.
But then the second thing is, let's say it is a win-win. Spell out why it's a win-win. You know what I mean? So be like, hey, I want you guys to talk. Do you want to talk to this guy? Here's why I think it would be great for you.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Email, and this could just as easily be an introduction. I think the checking is actually probably the biggest piece as I reflect on my own life. When people have dropped me those emails, we're like, yo, I'm like, mother.
Oh, no. Yes, but check. But when you check, it's like, hey, Charlie, do you want to talk to my buddy? He's
a copywriter. I know that you've
why
mentioned,
it's a win-win.
I know you've been mentioning that you got this old sales page for Charisma University. I saw him do it. He got this amazing thing. Yeah, great. Yeah, put me in touch. And then in the email,
he's struggling on YouTube, but he's killing it in the podcast game.
Yeah.
And I was thinking maybe you could give him some YouTube advice. He could give you some podcast advice. Like put that in your checking email.
And then going back to the first thing, and now you're emceeing both people. You go, yo guys, Charlie, meet Kevin. Kevin is a badass podcaster. He's gotten over 30 million followers and has a really cool method for launching podcasts. Kevin, Charlie's killing it in the YouTube game, and I think can probably help you a ton. I'll leave you guys to it now. Hopefully you guys get a chance to get on call. And like that's what the email reads like, but that's also what the conversation.
That's you like pre-checking. That's also what it looks like.
I get the sense that it's the things that we said in the middle, which technically come first, which is the checking and the vetting to see that this is a win-win and spelling it out. And when you do that, it's like the words are easy at that point.
Even when it is a good connection and people say, yes, I would like to talk to them, almost always they go, appreciate you checking.
Yes.
Like no one likes being CC'd on an email they're not expecting with an intro, and they're just like, well, now I got to deal with this.
Yeah, I'd love to take 15 minutes and explain to you how my industry works.
The more successful they are, the more protective they're going to be of their time.
Yeah. Cool.
Next is, I wanted to say that I've really been enjoying your podcast. It's the best thing I found in 2020.
Yes.
More interesting than what you discuss, however, is how you discuss it. I disagree with many conclusions, but I deeply admire how you guys reach them. Yes. How would you describe your manner of thinking? What does that process entail? And how can others begin to think similarly?
Good question, man. I try to do thought experiments with a lot of this stuff. And I'm presuming what you're asking about is like, I'll think differently about meat or something. So there's a handful of tenets and I'm going to be coming up with them, not in the best order, but I'll try to throw them all in there. One is to recognize that my own desires poison my ability to see the truth. So I separate honesty from integrity. So when we had our first conversation about whether meat eating was good, what we started with was like, we don't have to stop. Yeah. Like you're allowed to continue this, but like, let's get to the bottom of this. Yep. And in other ways I do this. So with the business, it's like, oh, should we launch this product or not? It's like, pretend that we both have $100 million in the bank right now. What do we do about this product? It's usually like, I'm too lazy. I don't want to do anything. And I just,
but for instance, like a mental exercise, like what if I had $100 million? So like I would do a YouTube video twice a year.
As I felt like it. Yeah.
And then you go, okay, well I don't. So I'm going to do one a month instead of what I have been doing, which is burning myself out doing 4 a month or whatever. So you don't have to do what you would do with $100 million. It's just a useful thought exercise.
It separates the pursuit of truth from your baked in interest, which is very, very useful for getting to the truth.
Yeah. And you can even say, because then you just say, be honest. You say, okay, I'm going to do less videos than I'm currently doing, but more than I would if I had $100 million because I want to grow the business. And now you're more honest about your motivations.
Sure. Take an ethical one, which is it easier. Like when people start with meeting, they go, well, it doesn't really, animals don't feel, they just have all these ridiculous things. And then you try to find counterexamples and always pursue principles. I think what you'll see with me when I talk to people, and part of the reason that some of our commenters, I think, misunderstand the conversations that we have, is that my questions to someone are not intended to, like, sorry, I'm all over the place. The common criticism is that these are just edge cases. But what I'm trying to do are establish principles, which is, for instance, in the case of Vaush, what is racism and how far are you willing to take it? If it is the case that racism is an unequal outcome by the color of people's skin, and supporting a policy that creates that makes one racist, is my continued support of the NBA racist against white people? Or is my continued support of the SAT racist against white people in favor of Asian people? So I'm trying to understand how far someone's principle goes, and almost always I'll find that it breaks. And what you see is that people do not reason from principles. They start with the conclusion and then backwards concoct a set of principles that they really don't actually follow. So go ahead.
I try to make this.
Yeah, I'm all over the place.
So I think a similar mindset that I have, which is also about principles, is if this were true, what would it imply about other things?
Yes.
And so, for instance, if it is true that the U.S. business system is racist because less than 13% of CEOs are Black, and that automatically means that it's because of racism, then the fact that more than 13% of the NBA is Black would also mean racism. So there's a sense of like, if this was true, what else would follow to be true? And then if you can find cases that you disagree with or that don't seem to hold up, then you go, okay, well then my first conclusion is not true. It's not an accurate way to assess what's happening. So that's, I think, what you mean by principles.
Yes.
What you mean by principles is, if this is the case, that because of X then Y, what else would have to follow?
Yeah. So, and I think if you look at the way that we think through things, that is a big one. Another one is to try to, and to get to a place of equanimity before and during the interaction, which is not always, it's easier on the podcast because we're sitting here calm, but I'm not always chilled about these sorts of things. So separating honesty from integrity helps there, knowing that you're not going to be lampooned, allowing for your past behavior to be hypocritical, and in fact, expecting much of what you did in the past to be hypocritical. Another big thing is to try not to nail anyone or yourself to a statement that they made. There are cases where people move the goalposts and they should be called out. But there are other times where it's like, you said, and if you jam them into what they said, now the conversation gets stuck of them defending this thing they really don't believe. So instead, for instance, with this racist thing with Vaush, I actually started the conversation off. I actually don't think you believe this, is what I said. But like, you have said that anyone who votes Republican is racist. I don't think that's what you said. He's like, oh no, I do. I was like, okay, we can start there, but I didn't.
The point wasn't to put him on a cross for something unless he was going to
truly believe it and defend
volunteer to be there. To say, no, I want to be on the hook for saying this.
Yes. So I try to let people like draw their own line in the sand, and we go like, that's the line you want? Like, you're 100% sure, and only then do we begin the discussion. And sometimes we screw this up just because the conversation can be muddy. Anything else that sort of comes up?
I'm just trying to think of examples of things that we've talked about in terms of politics and propaganda.
We did, ethical meat, and people raised a number of issues. And I think it was a lot of what you said. If this were true, then what else would I expect? Well,
I try to be open-minded. So like, for instance, I miss eating meat. Tim Ferriss sent out an email about this Maui company of ethical deer, and I was like, oh, sick. They purposefully they're marketed to me. You know what I mean? They're like for people that want to eat meat without feeling bad about it. And so I was like, oh man, this is amazing. I'm going to do this. And we talked about it on the podcast, and people in the comments raised a bunch of points. I think most of them were not persuasive, but one of them was. And so I canceled my subscription for that product. Like I try not to be married to something versus if I was like, if I'm immovable on this, then I can't possibly in good faith consume the arguments.
Sure.
But what someone did was actually, they did what I was saying in the other point. They were like, well, if the goal was to do population control, they would do it like they do it with dogs.
Yeah.
And they would just do the sterilization. They wouldn't kill them. We don't eat dogs when there's an overpopulation problem. And I was like, that is true. So like clearly the goal isn't just that. The goal is also to eat the deer. And then that was persuasive. So I try to enter in with the good faith that I'd want someone else to have. So I'm not going to die by my part in the debate, if that makes sense.
And there's a tremendous, I think you have to really be willing to, and I'm not always good at this, to forgive yourself and other people their hypocrisy, which I've mentioned in the past, which is like, oh, my whole life I've been doing this really bad thing. And if I follow this to its logical conclusion, I will have to accept that and, perhaps one day even change or live out of integrity for a while because I'm too weak to give up this thing that I enjoy. Another aspect of it is holding different levels of evidence with different certainty. So at the base of it, it's like I have my literal real-time experience of which I exist. Of that, I'm at 100. You know what I mean? Like that's the only 100 though. Like I woke up this morning, I could be in a dream. You know what I mean? I could be hypnotized right now. Like everything gets decreased as you get all the way up to some study that I read sometime. You know what I mean? And then there's the study that I read in depth and that I have anecdotal experience. And so I try to understand when I'm making an argument where my degree of certainty is in my evidence. And this is why I shy away from arguments about policy, because all it takes to disrupt my understanding of policy is a different article that refutes that first article. So I'm most interested in things that come from my experience, and I often value anecdotes over some study that I read a summary of in Newsweek because I truly believe my anecdotes matter more than my understanding of a study that I read in Newsweek.
Funny enough, I actually think as I'm running through all the examples, it just comes down to being principled and asking if this is true, then what else would be true? And if the person doesn't hold that belief, then what they're saying is their motivation isn't. Because I'm even thinking of like people who are saying, oh, we should tax anyone who makes over $1 million a year because they make 10 times more than I do. It's like, okay, how much should we tax them? We should tax them 50%. Okay, do you give 50% of your money to people who make 10% of what you make? Because those people exist also. No.
Well, they're not in the country, they say.
No, but whatever it is, like that's my thought. He's just saying, what's my thought? That's my thought process. Like if you believe this, then you would be doing this.
Well, let's walk it down a level. And then they respond with, oh, well, I only want to do this within the country. And you go, okay, that's interesting. Why? Well, I think that a country should represent the people who live in it. Okay, interesting. Do you think that a city or a neighborhood should represent the people who live in it? So like, could the city of Santa Monica vote to not give tax money to Compton, say for instance, or the rest of America? They'll say no. And you go, well, why? Why is your invisible barrier acceptable, but mine isn't? Well, who knows what they'll say, but it just breaks. You know what I mean? Like invisible barriers, yours being more moral than mine, fall apart very quickly, unless the argument is that I have an expansive invisible barrier and yours is contracted and mine isn't perfect, but it's better, which seems to be like a solid argument.
Sure.
But yeah, no, I think that's most of it. There was one other one that you had mentioned prior to that one that I thought was interesting. Doesn't matter. We got most of it. Hope that helps.
Justin, do you see anything that we haven't brought up? I mean, you watch us us discuss and debate things all the time. What strategies do you see?
I think something commendable is that the smarter you get, or I guess I should say like the more knowledge you have, the more difficult it is to be persuaded. But I think you guys both do a pretty good job keeping an open mind.
Interesting.
Even if the argument might seem rudimentary and you might have had it a million times, I feel like you still go through that process of questioning like the same way for everybody. It's
interesting. And you brought that up, which is good.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things that I try to do, and again, I don't do all of this 100%. I do this only on the podcast. And then I'm a different person in real life. But to recognize that, so there was a point in my life where I was deep into the arguments for atheism, for instance. and I could whatever argument was the watchmaker argument for God, I like knew how to dismantle it.
Yep.
If somebody comes to me with a watchmaker argument for God, I actually don't know that right now today I could take it apart. So what I have is a memory of a time that I could take it apart. And I try to recognize that, like, look, if I can't do it, then I can't do it. And so I try to, like, the intensity with which I hold something is going to reflect my ability to actually address it in the moment, and not like, oh no, I studied this 10 years ago and I knew how to address it.
Yeah. The other thing I try to do, I just thought of, is I try to Google the other side of the argument.
Mm-hmm.
So like if I think that police brutality is an issue because this many people are getting killed, and it's like, it's not 13% of black people, it's more than 13% of black people, I will Google and I will say, like, why are police not racist? And you'll see that there are arguments. You don't have to find them persuasive, but at least you know them.
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Hitchens is my absolute, one of my favorite debaters for this, because he's talking to some guy and the guy's talking, he goes, you seem like the kind of person who doesn't know the counter argument to your arguments. Like, you seem like the kind of person who's never heard this before.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what Christopher Hitchens was saying is, like, I know everything you're going to say. I've already thought about it beforehand, and I have a response where I either agree with you or disagree with you that I came up with over the course of 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're trying to process real time why I'm right or why I'm wrong. I've had this conversation in my head, and when I reached a point where I felt like I was wrong, I either went and like did soul searching and changed my mind, or I went and looked up if the data I had was right or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just very impressed by that, basically that burn, because he had not reached his conclusions because of how he was raised, but because of having like sword on sword debates in his mind.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not perfect, because you're going to have your own biases that are going to make one side argue better in your head than the other. But at least you go through the exercise. And hopefully if you're open-minded, you really can change your own mind about things. I've flip-flopped just like alone in my apartment from looking up things.
Flip-flopping is great. Flip-flopping is important. I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a great sign. Hopefully you've changed your mind about important things recently. Gosh, you said one other thing that I was reminded of. My brain is not clicking right now, though, so it doesn't matter. We'll move along.
Next is, hi, Charlie and Ben. As you may have noticed, there has been a rise in conspiracy thinking due to the COVID pandemic. My girlfriend is a medical student, and recently her sister came by to ask her what she has learned about vaccines during her studies. It turns out she has recently been digging into anti-vax websites on the internet.
I remember what I was going to say now. Go ahead.
It resulted in a heated discussion between the three of us. Today, her sister has started messaging various claims on the dangers of vaccination and problems with the corona tests in her family group chat, again leading to heated discussions. My girlfriend and I are worried that she will radicalize more and that this will have a negative impact on her mental health and on the family. How would you recommend dealing with this situation?
So what I was going to say is that be careful for words that make people obviously stupid and obviously wrong. Those words are flat earther, anti-vaxxer, Nazi, socialist in some circles. These are labels that you can apply to people to not address their arguments. Here's my thing. If your girlfriend is deep into medical research and has an opinion on vaccines that is not anti-vax, fine. If you are not, but you are certain that anti-vaxxers are wrong, I would encourage you to ease up off that belief in the same way that I would encourage you to ease up off of thinking the flat earthers are dumb. If you can't convincingly explain why the earth is in fact not flat and address their first level round of criticisms.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess the deeper point here, relating back to the first point, is don't let a label like conspiracy, the 9/11 conspiracy. Oh, therefore it's not true. Like you can just write so many things off with certain labels. Be aware of what those labels are and don't allow yourself to buy into it. Now, for the sake of this argument, let's presume that anti-vaxxing is incorrect, or she has an unnuanced view of it, or whatever. I actually don't know that that's the case. I haven't looked into it, so I don't have a strong opinion. I've gotten my vaccines. So I guess we can answer the question as is.
Sorry, but her sister is not able to convince her of this? Like they discuss this and her sister finds her medical student sister unpersuasive?
I guess so.
So
They just had a heated discussion.
Yeah. So get down to values. You share the same values. Right. So you're talking up here, and I think things can get tense, and then you get two sides, and you get Republicans and Democrats, and they'll never come together. Go down to values. This is your sister. And I think what you say is, it sounds to me like what you want to do is be healthy. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds to me like you want to be healthy and you want everyone in the world to be as healthy as they can. And you want your kids to be healthy. So do I. So like, let's just understand that, like, even if you vehemently think I'm wrong, like, I really want you and your family to be healthy. And I recognize that you really want you and your family to be healthy. That will allow us to hopefully disagree on the data without impugning the other one's intent, whether we do it overtly or covertly, which is kind of what happens. Like, you become this black sheep, crazy person. What you have is someone who disagrees with you that thinks that they're doing the right thing for their family and their country, though. I think that will help. And then I think ask them, instead of foisting your view, say, what was it that you found most persuasive? Like, show me like the moment where you went from someone who received their vaccines and has never had measles, mumps, or rubella to the moment where you became concerned.
Well, another actually, going back to the other question, but for this one, another good like question to ask when you're having a conversation with someone is like, what would have to be true for you to be in favor of the vaccine?
Yeah.
And if the answer is nothing, it's like, okay, this is a belief at this point. This isn't like a thing that's based on thought. So there's no point in us discussing it. You know what I mean? There has to be something. Like, what would convince you? And then just whatever the thing is, that the earth was round, that the earth was flat, that the vaccines were safe, that vaccines were dangerous.
Yeah.
Like, each of you should have an answer to that. Like, oh, well, if you showed me that a statistically significant number of people who get vaccinated get autism, that would make me wary of vaccines. What about you? Okay, well, if you could show me that there's no correlation with vaccines and autism, then yeah, I guess I would be a proponent of vaccines. It's like, okay, now let's just
reasonable
find sources of data that we both agree with.
Yeah, and we can dispute the data. We can say, I don't trust this particular source, but
sure, if one of you wants to trust the CDC and the other one doesn't, has a different data source, like, okay.
Okay, now let's get down to why, though. We can get down to why. The other thing that I think, especially in families, that you can do is I love fighting. And I will not do this unless I actually want to make peace, which I usually don't. I'm like enjoying the disagreement. But like my dad at one point, when we're talking, or frequently, you know, I'll tell him that his orange man bad view of Donald Trump is, to me, doesn't make any sense. Like, I say these things that I say on the podcast. Oh, do you know? How do you know what you know? Like, you're so... I've known for ages. He just knows, right? And he'll say, in semi-serious jest, you are truly lost. You are the problem with this country. And I go, hold on. You mean the kid that you raised for 18 years, who donates a huge chunk of his money to charity and tries to convince you to do the same, who stopped eating meat and ruins Thanksgiving every year by, with his vegetarian. That guy is the problem. Your spawn, the one that you made. Like, you can lean on the relationship and the history of care and love that is in there in times where it gets heated. And especially if it's like your dad, you just get to blame them for, you're like, whatever I am, you did. So,
well, yeah, but for sister, that's not necessarily helpful.
No, but if she's older, be like, this is all because of you.
No, yeah, I think the biggest thing is just like, yeah, what convince you that vaccines are bad? What, if anything, will convince you that vaccines aren't bad? And then go from there.
Yep. Cool.
Nice. Last one is, should I date someone poorer than me? Some context. I am in a relationship with a dude for 6 months now, and he's been inspired by me to go back to study to be a teacher next year, which is lovely, and I'm happy for him. But I work and have accumulated savings for a house, while he has, I think, 10% of my savings and will now be in debt with his studies, plus be a poor student for a few years. I am 28, female, and I guess not looking to have a kid anytime soon. But this will mean that I'm set back 4 to 5 years if he won't be earning enough to support kids for a while. Although I guess I will have saved even more to support my kids by then. How much does love surpass finances? What kind of questions should I ask myself to figure out if I will still be happy and not resentful 3 years later?
Yeah, there's no one size fits all, right? Like, should I marry someone poorer than me? I don't know. That would very much depend on
how much do you value money, and what does money mean to you? You know,
how important is what I think a handful of words that you should write down and think about or journal on, like financial stability. What does that mean concretely? Is that $100,000 in the bank? Is that my husband earns more than me? Like, you might even want to write down like a good partner. Like, what is a good partner? And I'm sure you're going to have like, cares about me, right? Oh, he does, like, does this. And you might, if you're being honest with yourself, have earns more and provides for the family. Get clear your internal expectations for life, a husband, a relationship, etc.
But can I just say, you can like whatever you like.
Mhm.
You can literally like whatever you like. You can refuse to sleep with people who are over 5 feet tall or under 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
Like, you can have the most obscure, as long as it's consenting adults. So yeah, if you're a woman or if you're a man and you decide that making more money than you matters, it's not evil to filter for that.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I don't know that it's a recipe to be happy or not. That's for your self exploration. Is like, you can certainly pursue things that will not satisfy you.
Mhm.
But that is the thing I would soul search about.
Yep.
But I think you have permission to make any list you want and then filter for it, as long as you just accept that it might take a little while to find.
And with regards to money, I think it's, you've mentioned, if somebody asked me like, hey, I have this rule, like nobody under 7 feet, what I would be like is consider that you could be surprised. I actually think money is an interesting one, particularly from a woman in our society who is 28 and is thinking of having a family, where it's like, look, this isn't nothing. That like financial hardship is, I think, one of the top reasons that marriage, or at least the top reported reason that marriages break apart. So it's good of you to be questioning this. I think get your internal stuff onto the page about what stability means and about what it means, and like, does it make me less attracted to him? Be honest, because you're probably not going to like a lot of the answers that you see.
Yeah, you'll think they
You'll
reflect
think
poorly on you.
Yeah, you'll be like, I don't like to write that I am less attracted to him as a result of this, but I am. Get them out, and I know this is going to be tough, but fuck it, you guys are thinking of getting married. Once you've been honest about that, sit down with him and talk, and be like, look, I got it. Like, here's me coming to the table with my messed up stuff. Now you can get mad at it, but it is. I didn't choose any of this. Like, this just
But
is the case.
It's not that he's not a man because he doesn't make money. It's just that
Maybe
you have a belief.
I have these. Yeah. These things are not true of the world.
Yes.
They are true of me.
Right. So
Like-
you could say, like, if you pursue this teaching thing and put yourself in debt, I will be less attracted to you.
I think. Yeah.
But it's not that you will be less attractive. It's
Mhm.
not that you'll be a loser.
Yes. These things aren't true about you. They're true about.
It's just
me.
me.
Yeah.
I. That's a lot of I.
Yes.
If you go back to school for this, it makes me whatever.
Yes. And if he gets upset or defensive or angry, it's like, you got to recognize, I didn't choose any of these. Yeah, like, these exist inside of me, and I want, because I love you, to share them with you. And also what that will allow you to do is be like, tell me about your plans, like, and be honest with me. Are you ambitious? Like, is this a step, and like you're driven to earn and provide, which it kind of matches, and I could take 3 years of like less earning for a guy that it cares deeply about this? Or are you like, I just want a cabin in the woods and my small income and a small pension, and like the kids will live off the land, and like
And someone could be very happy like that.
Yes.
But I don't know if it's you.
yes.
So
And so I think if you spend some time up front, reveal to yourself your own inner thought processes and your own beliefs about marriage, finances, what is appropriate, bring them to him in a way that is loving, that pre-frames the conversation as like, I want to talk to you about this because I care about you, because I want this to work, but also because I don't want to resent you down the line. And quite frankly, please don't get mad because I'm not choosing any of this. This stuff is like, it just is inside of me.
no, the short and very unhelpful answer is that there's a woman who will marry a guy that makes 10% of what she makes, and they'll be very happy together, and she won't resent him. And there's a woman who will marry a guy that makes 10% of what she makes, and it will cause issues down the line, and eventually they'll divorce.
Yeah.
And I don't know which one you are.
And what you want to do is figure that out before you get married as best you can. So that's the point of this conversation. And quite frankly,
And of the self-exploration.
Yeah.
Like, I think the other thing that everybody realizes is like, you can search forever for the perfect person, but also there's a sense of like, I'm not the perfect friend to you necessarily, but we've been great friends for 17 years or 18 years. So yeah, like making money is on your list. It'd be really nice for you to try to figure out if it's the second most important thing on your list or the 19th.
Yeah.
And to get honest with that. And if he has the other 18 and it's 19th, then you're fine. And if it's the second most important thing to you, you are in trouble.
The other real dangers are covert contracts. Like, let's say that, you know, you just assume that he's going to take a step back financially to go to school, but he's going to leapfrog ahead in his mid and late 30s. And you're just kind of banking on that, but you don't talk to him. That is a recipe for resentment.
If he doesn't.
If he doesn't. So what you don't want to do is, like, you want to get all those contracts in your head and all those beliefs onto the page and be like, look, you're going to sign this now. You're going to sign up for this or agree it, or tell me, sign it, but tell me where you agree, disagree, like, you know, are on board, aren't on board, etc. So let's make all of our expectations, wishes, and beliefs overt, speak about them, and then it'll be much easier to make a decision about what to do. And maybe he's like, you know what? Ambition to me is a big question mark, but if it matters that much to you, I understand that, and I will take on this burden. Like, I choose to. And then hopefully, like, that if he says it overtly, it will reduce resentment that he might feel of feeling driven if he just is getting passive aggressive stares from you every time we open his paycheck and it's like not enough money or something like that.
The flip side, though, is you can also break up with someone you love. Like, I don't know if I'll ever have kids. I definitely don't want kids in the near term. And if I'm dating someone, they're like, yeah, I need kids in the next year. It's like, okay, I love you and we should break up. So, like, that's a deal breaker for me. Needing kids near term is an instant, nothing else matters deal breaker. So, like, you decide if this is an instant deal breaker or not.
Sure. Cool.
That was the last one.
Let's do patrons. All right, everybody. Hope that you enjoyed this. If you're a patron, hop on over to Patreon and we'll see you there. And if you want to become one, consider clicking the link in the description to check out the questions. That's it for today. Peace.